Welcome back. It's nice to see you again. If you've ever had questions about how to get into video production, how to get your foot in the door, how to just get started editing, learning particular skills, this is the episode for you. This interview with Brad took place a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, we had to do it over Zoom, but I think the content is still pretty amazing. I've got chapter markers down below, so if you have a specific part you want to jump to, there's something specific you want to learn about how to get into video, go ahead and take advantage of that. But with no further ado, let's jump into that interview with Brad.
Brad, it's awesome to have you on here. I was wondering if you could just give us an introduction about yourself, the work you do, where you work, and maybe talk about some of the projects or clients that maybe we've heard of or that you want to tell us you've worked on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm Brad Millett. I'm the post-production manager here at BW Productions. And here we do primarily corporate videos. In the sense of we work with a lot of large companies here in Utah. So we're one of the major video production companies for the University of Utah. We've worked a lot with the Salt Lake Chamber. We do a lot with Adobe, Domo, things like that. So we primarily do like these corporate interview style videos. And yeah, it's been awesome meeting and working with all these different companies here in Utah.
So for people that aren't familiar with what corporate videos are, maybe they haven't got into the corporate world yet, could you give us the 1-minute explanation of what that actually is and what that entails?
Yeah, so a lot of the time when we get asked to do a video for a company, it is whether they're announcing a new product, a new software, or something like that. Or it could also go along in the sense of they're wanting to explain what they do. Like, for instance, we do videos for a company called DDI. They basically help parents with younger children that aren't learning as quickly as they should, or they're not picking up certain skills, so they can go in and help these parents teach their children these skills. So we make videos so these parents can find DDI, then they can turn around and help their children. We just did a huge one for the women in business whole video. So like the Athena and Pathfinder award winners. So we went through and filmed the award winners and then edited it for the actual convention. They, had a little cool video about who they are, what they did for the community, and kind of their impact with that. So that's primarily what corporate videos are, in the sense of what is the company able to do for the community or for their customers, in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And how did you get into video?
I did a lot of like adventure motorcycling, and I thought it'd be really cool to make videos about motorcycling. So I sold my motorcycle to buy a camera, essentially. So I had a lot of friends in the automotive world. Drift events, car events, things like that. So that's kind of how I got my start in video, is just making these really fun videos for my buddies. And then it evolved into working with different companies within the car community. And so making product videos, I did interviews like testimonials, things like that. And then that led me into my first corporate job. I worked for a medical staffing company here in Utah. And that was kind of like my first big full-time gig. And then I kind of found myself into BW. I was actually just hired as a rough cut editor for these guys. I was just going to come in just for a couple hours a week, just kind of rough cut the videos just so it could be passed along to the next editor to do all the storytelling and everything like that. And I just came in and just kind of kept doing more and more and more. And finally, they're just like, hey, you know what? We're just going to have you do all of our videos, just kind of showcasing what I could do, in the sense of, I had a lot of animation experience. I've been doing corporate videos for the last couple of years before I came here. So it was just a perfect fit, and just kind of moved into it.
The question of how to get your start is, I think, probably one of the questions that most of the viewers are going to have questions about. Mm-hmm. So how did you make that transition from making fun videos with your friends to actually having a job doing it?
When I first started making videos, I did do them for free. I had buddies that, I just wanted to make fun videos. It was fun for me. It was a passion and a hobby. And so, and I noticed that I started getting pretty decent at them. So I found this company that was within kind of already what I was doing, a company that sold detail products. So like shampoos and waxes and things like that. And I saw them at a car event, and I was just like, hey man, like, I'd like to make some videos. And he's like, hey, you know what? I would like somebody to make videos for me. And so I did the first couple of videos for him for free. And that gave me not only the confidence, but then the knowledge, right? So I did make a lot of mistakes while I was working with him, but along that time, I was also making YouTube content in the sense of just more for practice. I'm a big outdoor guy, so I made hiking tutorials, like, what kind of gear to wear and whatever. So that kind of like facilitated this growth. And then when I was working with that specific company, I started just reaching out to associate companies in the sense of like, hey, we also do work or, customers of that client. And so that led me into doing huge rallies with cars. So there's like 40 cars that get together, over $2 million worth of cars, and we drive around all of Utah. And I got to film those guys. And that led me to, business owners that had these really expensive cars, right? Obviously, they're doing well for themselves. So I networked while I was at those events. At the beginning, I did notice it was a very slow process. But then once it started going, and you make a couple videos for free, get a decent demo reel made, and I just would hand out cards like crazy. And I still get people reaching out to me saying like, hey, like I have your business card. Do you still do video? It's like, yeah, man, from a card I gave out like 3 years ago. Some of your first videos, you might only make $200 or $300 or whatever the budget is, but still putting in your full effort. So then the next time they come back and be like, man, that video was awesome. Let's do another one. Be like, yeah, just so this next video, if you want that same quality, it's going to be a little bit more because I put in a lot of extra time for you. And so just, kind of putting your heart and soul into every single project that you touch will get you the repeat work. So yeah, it's cool to find new clients, but it's even better to do consistent work with the same clients, because then those clients are growing. So then you can grow with them. And then, your first video might have only been $200. Now you're charging them $1,500.
That's awesome. I think a lot of people struggle with the networking portion. The people I've talked to, the advice I give them is pretty consistent. It's that if you want to get out and network, at least for me, all of the client work that I've ever done has come from me just getting out in the community in areas that I'm passionate about and making friends, just making connections with people. And then eventually somebody needs a video for something, right? And then that's how you end up giving them a business card, letting them know that that's what you're into. So it sounds like we've had a similar experience there.
Yeah. And I've had a couple of kids reach out to me and like, hey, like, how did you do this too? How did you even start and that kind of stuff? And the thing I always just tell them is like, just ask, go and ask the people. One of the things that everybody's on is social media, right? So you're going through and find companies that you would like to work with, that you're passionate about, and then just reach out to them being like, hey man, like if you send me free product, I'll send you content. And then that can facilitate a partnership. And then you can grow into a paid partnership, right? That's where most of my companies that I work with, that's how I started. It was products that I wanted. So I was like, hey, you send me free stuff, I'll make you cool videos. And now I'm still getting free stuff, but I'm also getting paid for it. You might send out, 50 DMs, but you're going to get now 5 new clients that'll send you product and make content for them. And then, once you get 1 or 2 companies underneath your belt, other people are going to be like, hey, I have this portfolio of 2 or 3 companies that I've been working with. I'd love to do work with you too. And be like, hey, you know what? I love your stuff. Let's do it. So just ask. That's just the biggest thing.
So when you're sending out these DMs, you're doing the cold calling. What do potential clients like to see in those type of messages? Yeah. What should they be doing when they're cold calling? I imagine a link to like their reel, for example, is something that they definitely should be including.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that whenever I'm like reaching out to a new company that I want to do work with, the first thing is like, I look for a need that the customer needs, in the sense of like, hey, I see that you're not posting consistently. Are you just missing content? Do you need extra content so you can post 2 to 3 times a week, or even once a week at least, right? Like to make it in social media, you have to be consistent. That's the name of the game, essentially. Also reach out to them being like, hey, you know what? Like the content that you have right now is good, but I can do it better. Always associated with the demo. Like, hey man, I just checked out your feed. Your product is awesome. And you know, I'd really like to help you out with some content. Here is my portfolio of some of the work I've done with companies like you. And I would love to just to have a phone call. Once you get a customer or a client on the phone, you have a really good shot of landing them. It's just getting them on the phone to talk about that, having a dialogue, and don't be afraid to say, I'm worth money. My content is worth X amount of money. You know, I want to make a 1-minute video for you. That's going to cost you, whether it's $200 if you're first starting out, or if it's, you know, $3,000. You know, those budgets exist, right? We do projects where we charge clients $100,000 now for roughly a 3-minute video. You know, so customers and people and businesses have money to spend. You just got to show your value, you got to show your worth, and being confident in yourself is the other big thing, you know. And then if you're not as proud of your work as you should be or could be, then invest in yourself, make it better, right? Learn skills to do it. You know, when my first corporate job, you know, I remember that's really when I really made my first demo reel, was to get that job. And I just pulled together a whole bunch of just random stuff, put it together as best as I could. And just, you know, showing the fact that you're willing and you're hungry and you're wanting to do it is huge. But, you know, there's so many ways you can facilitate getting paid, but just making sure you do get paid is also very important than just making the content.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned something earlier on that I think is really important for people to hear, and that's that you're not just cold calling without doing legwork. There is effort in the beginning to say, I am providing a service. Does this client need this service? And if so, why do they need this service? And maybe that's they don't have enough social media content. Maybe you catch their advertisement on the local news and it's terrible. Whatever it is, right? You've identified, I'm calling this client for a reason. I'm not just shooting random messes out there and praying that somebody calls me back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, you have to have a reason to do work for them, right? You can't just call somebody, right? I can't just call, I don't know, like a mining company, for example, and just being like, hey, I've never done mining videos before, but I do good work, so hire me.
Shifting gears a little bit, you mentioned earlier that you started at your current studio as a rough cut editor. I think a lot of people have no idea what the actual roles at a studio are. And so I'm wondering if you could maybe break down the normal roles, the roles that you have at your studio, and then what your current position is and sort of what the day-to-day looks like for that role.
Yeah, absolutely. Currently, we have 3 editors, including myself. Each of us do different things, right? Each editor always has something that they are a little bit better at. They like, it's just naturally sway towards something, right? So I've got one editor that is really, really good at story development, telling stories. Right. So a lot of the story development will go with him. And then I have a different editor that's really good at building the excitement and hype of like a recap video. And so all of that content will go to her. Both of us and all of us will actually do rough cuts. So there's times where these guys are cranking on stuff. I'll still do rough cuts. So the first and foremost thing, right, you have to ingest it, right? You get the content, it needs to go somewhere, whether it lives on a hard drive or we have servers and things like that. From there, it goes to the first person that's just going to rough cut an interview. So they're going to take the full long interview. They're going to sync the footage and the audio. So if it has an A and B cam, they're going to make sure that those two line up. They're going to sync the audio, make sure that it's clean. And then from there, they're going to start going through. Our first step is we're going to cut out the interviewer. So everybody that's, you know, the person actually asking the questions, we cut all those out for our type of videos that we make. Sometimes, you know, we still leave them in there depending on the video, but most of the time that stuff gets cut out. From there, we go through and make selects of the dialogue, right? So like, whenever we have a video from a client, there's a very specific end result that we're going to. So, you know, we did, so one of the videos that we're working on right now is a company called Zangular here in Utah, right? They're specifically going for a product launch. So we'll go through and listen to the whole interview and pick out parts that will facilitate, talking about this new product. And so we'll make all those selects. Then from there, we take all these selects, throw them on a new timeline, and then start building the story. Sometimes that stays with the same person. Sometimes that'll go to a different person. So, one editor will do all those rough cuts and the selects, and then, or usually just the rough cuts, and then the next person will take it on, make the selects, and start building the story. And then after the story is created, you add your music track and kind of make it fun. And then you also switch between A and B cams, and then you start adding your B-roll on top of that. So, and my general rule that we always stick to is B-roll is never just to hide cuts. B-roll is there to help emphasize the story that they're already telling. So if they're talking about a very specific product, then get B-roll, right? So you always, like when you're filming, right? You always shoot the interview and then you do the B-roll after. So hey, you know what? They talked about this specific product. You should probably get B-roll of this product. And that's how we operate. And so we'll go through and we'll have different B-roll shots of this product that they're talking about, or if it's a service, right? We're going to have videos of them performing that service. And usually a B-roll sequence is anywhere between 2 to 4 clips. Different angles, wide, tight, different things like that, showing them doing this service. So as they're talking about it, you can actually see it happening too, while the person is continually talking in the background or his voiceover. And so once once that's done, we'll go through, do some maybe light coloring, and then we'll send that to client as a rough cut, or just as as a first draft. Hey, you know what? The story it's looking great so far. Here's a couple of tweaks or changes. We make those changes. And then usually from there, that's when it will ultimately come to me, and then I'll do all the final coloring. I'll do all the final audio mastering, and then deliver it to the client again. And then typically, if there's any little changes or things like that, that usually goes back to the editor that put the story together, and they're going to make those little changes. And again, the same person can do all this stuff, but we just all of us have our own strengths, and that's how we're able to crank out these interviews, usually within 1 to 2 weeks, is because of our process. And so we just found that works really well for us, and so we're able to serve our clients, fairly quickly.
That's awesome. One of the things you mentioned was B-roll is shot intentionally. So it's not. I think a lot of people, they show up on site, they shoot their B-roll. Maybe they're making a travel video or something, right? They just walk around shooting stuff.
Yeah.
And then they record the interview later.
Yeah.
And pray that it fits together.
Oh, for sure. And one of the bigger things too that we always do with every single B-roll scene that we're shooting, we typically shoot 5 to 6 angles with movement. Some are static, but now I have 6 shots, 5 or 6 shots that I can compress to, the 2 to 4 shots. They'll do the interview, and then they'll have dedicated time, whether it's an hour or 2, just for B-roll, making sure that it's going to coincide with the story.
That's awesome. Shifting gears again. So because most of these videos are going to be targeted at absolute beginners trying to do what you did, right? YouTube University. I'm curious, what recommendations would you give to people that are maybe looking to make their first hardware purchase, maybe make their first software purchase? They just want to get set up with something so that they know they're not starting just on the complete incorrect path, that they're actually building towards something that's worthwhile.
Oh man, I can tell you how much gear I bought that was just the wrong gear. For me, a lot of it was trial and error, unfortunately, until I got a mentor. And that's the thing that really, when I found a person that I could ask questions, that had more experience, that shift for me happened very quickly. When I first started video editing, I didn't even own my own laptop. I was editing videos on my wife's MacBook Air. It was like 5 or 6 years old. Like it would crash. You know, Adobe Premiere already crashes as much as it does, but oh my gosh, like it was horrible. So like then I was like, I need to buy a computer. So I went to Costco, bought like, you know, a computer from Costco, and it worked better, but not as well. And then, yeah, after I worked with my mentor, I was telling him some of the frustrations I had during editing. He's just like, yeah, your computer sucks. And that's where a lot of your frustrations are going to come from, right? You're not going to be as fast. When I really made that focus to be a better editor, one of my biggest focuses, I might not be the best editor, but I'm going to be one of the fastest editors. And so when I was learning how to do different things, I would try the same thing different ways, right? In Premiere, there's a million ways to do one thing. And so I took the time to say, okay, when I'm going to start coloring, what's the best way to color? What's the most efficient way to start coloring? So by the time the video is done, if I need to make a little tweak, you know, I'm not going to have to sit there and paste attributes to every single little clip, right? So like learning how to do that at the very beginning, that was one of the things. But asking my mentor, and like when I came across things that I didn't know or didn't understand, like, hey, this is the problem I'm having. This is the solution that I think I need to do. What is that? And most of the time, he would just come back and be like, hey, what you're looking for is called this, YouTube this. Just the name of things, right? Because like between Resolve, Final Cut, Adobe, right? The names are just whack. And so knowing just what the name is, then you can finally Google that and be like, hey, you know, how do I do this? And so that's the one thing that I will say is find somebody, just reach out, find an editor that you really like their content on social media. And just like most of them, including myself, like we want to help. You know, very few you'll run into people that like, no, you know, you're the competition. I don't want to talk to you. Most of us do want to help other people. And so every once in a while, you know, I'll have people reach out and be like, hey, like, how did you do this? How would you do that? I saw this video. How did you do that transition? And so just ask the people that make those videos. I also would say it's not such a bad thing to buy courses like Skillshare, that's it. Yeah, so investing in something like Skillshare, I did that. So it's like a subscription base. That's where I learned how to color. I was going through YouTube and I didn't find any good courses really that taught me how to read Lumetri scopes, how to, you know, if I'm having a weird thing that like I just can't figure out, how do I fix it? How do I resolve that problem? Now I would consider myself a pretty quick colorist, being able to at least, you know, get like a raw footage and set, whether it's C-Log or even like a Red Raw or whatever it is that we get back from our guys, being able to color it, get it out, and, you know, match skin tones, match, you know, color tones or temperature throughout the whole video, everything like that, being able to pinpoint, okay, this is what's off in this clip, and this is how I can fix it really easily. And so that's how I gained that knowledge, was, you know, through Skillshare. So that's another program that I really liked at the very beginning. So between a mentor, YouTube, and Skillshare, can't go wrong.
Well, I feel like I've taken a lot of your time, and I'm very much appreciative for it. I'm wondering if we wanted to wrap up with you maybe shouting out, I don't know if you want to shout out like maybe some of your, like a personal website or your production company or whatever you want to shout out, just so people know where they can find you, and if they're looking to hire you for work, how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, if you guys do ever have any questions, I am more than happy to answer any questions you have. I am busy but I will get back to you. It just might take some time. You know, I've got 2 kids. I've got an 8-month-old on top of not only doing a lot of video production here, I do have freelance work that I'm still doing. And so if you reach out to me, I will get back to you. I promise. It just might take a minute, but So BW Productions is here in Utah. We do, we can facilitate any type of corporate video. We all are still working into narrative and things like that. So if you do have any questions or any work-related, requests or anything like that, we can facilitate it. We do both video and photo here. You can find me personally. My hashtag, or my Instagram handle, I should say, is bmillproduction. And it's and then my website is bmillproduction.com. So if you want to check that out, or reach out to me through social, more than happy to do that. I both have Instagram and Facebook. So anything that you guys need help with, or shoot, if you live in Utah and you want to shoot together, let's do it. Like those are some of my favorite times, is when you get a whole bunch of shooters together and you just walk around downtown and just get cool angles because you see how they do it. And then, you're like, hey, that looks kind of cool. So you're going to replicate it. So it's just fun. Like collaborating is, we're in a way, we're a small enough community that we should only be here to help each other out. There's really there's so much work, and, there's so much work. There's very few of us that do it. So, there's no such thing as an enemy in production. We're here to support each other and help each other. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time. I hope people check you out. You've been awesome with your advice, and I'm sure everybody that's listening will get a lot of benefit from it. With that, okay. I'm going to stop the recording if I can find the button.